right. You have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the work session?
I move that we approve the agenda for the work session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item of business on the work session is the amendment to the agenda. The Equity Task Force is not doing a presentation tonight, so we need to remove that item from our agenda. Is there a motion to remove?
I move that we remove the Equity Task Force presentation.
Is there a second? Discussion? Yes.
Yeah, so what will be the plan for having that back on the agenda?
They are having a meeting in July and will be on the agenda for August.
Okay, thank you. For the work session in August.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Good, thank you. Wait, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. The second order of business is the notice of closed meeting as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1. The school board needs to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of appointment or promotion of particular officers, appointments, or employees. The school board chair recommends that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting.
Move that we go into closed session.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to now convene in closed session in room 206. this meeting just concluded. Nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene a closed meeting and lawfully permitted to be so discussed on the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now we need to certify by roll call vote. Right? Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Carter? Dr.
Yes.
Coleman? Yes. Dr. Nillis?
Yes.
Dr. Sinai? Dr. Gupta, yes. All right, so now we get to amend the personnel report. Is there a motion to amend the personnel report?
I move that we amend the personnel report.
Second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Dr. Edwards?
Certainly. One of the items on the agenda tonight on the personnel recommendations, for which you just amended, is the new appointment of the principal of Dunbar Middle School. And it gives me great pleasure to announce that our new Dunbar Middle School principal is going to be someone very familiar to us, Mr. Danny Rule, who is currently the principal at Darrington Elementary School. And Danny is going to be the new principal at Dunbar. And Danny has been with us for several years. He's been principal for 6 years. He was assistant principal and a teacher in a division. And what he brings to Dunbar Middle School is his love for children, community, some great, wonderful ideas that I'm looking forward to seeing implemented at Dunbar. And we wish him all the success that's due. But we have a big task now with Darrington, because our Darrington family is very important to us, and finding the next leadership at Darrington is my next mission. So, thank you.
Any comments? Well, we're excited about this opportunity, but you do have a
Yes.
job in front of you. Okay. The next item of business deals with the task force on the future of education in the city of Lynchburg, pre-K and beyond. You all received a copy of this. What?
Take action on the personnel recommendations on the agenda. On the personnel recommendations, the list of all the folks. Do we have to take action on the other?
Do we have, I think we do have to vote.
We
on the-
amended it, but I don't think we actually
We
took
normally
action.
do it under consent agenda, but we didn't vote. All
I
right,
just
we
want
do
to make
need to.
sure,
Thank you.
sure it's legal.
Yes, all right. Is there a motion to?
Move the adoption.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I'm just so used to being under consent agenda. that-
Yes.
All right, now we're on the task force on the future of education in the city of Lynchburg. Each of you received a copy of this electronically, and you should have a hard copy. Dr. Coleman and I have been working with the city leadership, Mayor Tweedy, Vice Mayor Dolan, city manager, and associate city manager, Mr. Botha. And the three of us have worked since, I guess, December, looking into how this should come about and the purpose. And you all have given input into people that you think should be appointed. We submitted a lot of names. You can still submit names that has not been moved forward. But the first task was to put together a document that would outline the scope and sequence of this committee. And this has involved both city and schools. You know, the city owns our school buildings, and we're an aging city buildings in our schools. And so as we look at how we're going to move forward and meet the needs of our students, we start thinking about where do we go with this? Where do we go with programming? How do we look at existing services that we could use, whether it's social services or mental health, child care, all of these things. And that was the reason for this, and the funding long term. So I think if you saw, our 5-year strategic plan is driving the first 5 years. And then the outcome of the recommendation of this task force would help us map where we go in 10 years and 15 years. There's going to be a great deal of work. It takes a great deal of commitment. But this is the charter that we're hoping that will guide this committee, the steering committee, and the different various committees that have been assigned. So the floor is now open for questions and discussion. Dr. Edwards, do you have anything to add?
You pretty much
Dr.
summed it
Coleman?
Oh, very concise.
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Thank you for saying those things and the major purpose of the committee. I've heard from several of the citizens that it was just appeared from the article that it was more of the city enforcing this on the school board. And so that's good to hear that perspective, and that's,
It really is not the city forcing this on the school board. This actually came up during a city school leadership meeting, and I think I was the one that brought it up, because as we look at our building needs, how we're going to fund those building needs, we needed to make sure that there's a plan and that everybody that's involved in that plan has discussion around it. There are a lot of people that have experiences in the communities our community that will be able to add to the knowledge base. Dr. Gupta and I both volunteered to serve on the committee. Dr. Nillis has volunteered to work on a committee. If any of you are interested in working on a subcommittee, if you just let us know, then we can submit more names. But you all did submit a very long list of well-qualified individuals to select from. The next step would be to approach these individuals to see if they're interested in serving on these positions. And we originally started, we thought that the leadership from both city council and school board would be the ones that would work on, be the chair and vice chair. And then after further discussion, we thought that to take it away from both bodies so that it's not either an appointment or political, it's a neutral, but with people who have been in this position before, who have led task force or worked on things like this. And they're now narrowing that down. We're narrowing that down.
I'm sorry, Susan, could you explain that one more time? I was talking about the chair and the vice chair.
Chair and the vice chair.
Will not be city council or
School board. No,
Okay.
they will be
Yeah.
community.
Okay.
But they've held the names that, from what you all turned in and what city council turned in, are people who've worked on task force before. We've had the Heritage Task Force. We had, when we had Glass, we had a committee that looked at the remodeling. And so these are people that have been involved in things like this before.
It's been a, quick.
No, go ahead. So I'm going to take names that people want to talk.
Okay. Well, it's been a joy to participate in these initial meetings to get us where we are. And I've said a lot in those meetings and don't necessarily need to share that today, but I would be interested in assisting with the program and collaboration opportunities. And I'm very pleased that Chair Morrison and School Board Member Gupta would be the two persons representing the board. This is going to be very critical that we articulate thoughts and concerns and that it is mutually driven by board and council and ultimately what is best for kids going forward.
And I will also say that we did, in our meetings, we understand that there are professionals that will need to be involved. The demographic studies, that funding would be a part of what we would need to look at too in terms of hiring professionals, hiring the people that need to do these things. Yes, Bob?
I just have a couple of questions. One is I think this is a great idea, and I think city and school board coming together is great, and I think the statement that the understanding that public education substantially and strategically contributes to long-term strength of the family, the neighborhood and community, and the economy is a great place to start for all of us. And I also think the idea of pursuing national leading practices in urban education is a great idea to compare ourselves to other urban environments, and also that it will be data-driven. I think those are all great places to start and terrific. I have a couple of questions. One is on page 3, the Subcommittee for Objectives and Demographics, talking about enrollment trends and demographics, and Susan, you just mentioned this as far as gathering that. We've talked a lot in this board or asked questions about the decreasing enrollment over the past several years in the district. And our current budget we just passed estimated that we're going to drop by about 178 students for this coming year. And One thing I don't want to have this task force do is postpone information or things that we should be looking at currently. I mean, I think we need information about the enrollment and what's happening for our budget discussion for 2021. So we need it by the end of this year as far as some information about that. So I would ask that this doesn't sidetrack us in obtaining that information about why is there a decrease in enrollment, where is the decrease, so that we can actually discuss that sooner.
And that was very clear in our meetings that we would not delay our actions or delay our gathering of information, that it's very important as we make decisions that we have that information. And that would not be put on the back burner until the committees finish their reports, that we would move forward with getting the information and with projects that we need to complete.
Great.
So that was discussed at length.
Good. One other comment, leading practice in education, stating to conduct research on best and leading practice in preparing educators and families on how to achieve positive outcomes for students in diverse educational environment, which seems like a part of what Lynchburg City Schools want to do day in and day out. And I would assume that would be strongly weighted with representatives of Lynchburg City Schools, our administration, our principals, people who are dealing with that regularly as part of that goal rather than farming
Looking
that
at
out.
national trends and
Yeah.
other.
But the representative on the committee or whatever that subcommittee works,
Yes.
that would be represented. And the one other question I have is that on page 4, it says any funding request from the task force must be forwarded to the appropriate staff members for the school board consideration.
And then forward, I watched the city council meeting
yeah.
where they discuss it, and then from the school board, it would then go to city council for appropriation.
So we are not responsible for the financial
I
aspect.
asked
'cause
that
this-
question,
yeah.
that we would,
Yeah, because the charter sort of suggests that. I mean, the statement is any further request from the task will be forwarded to the appropriate staff members for the school board consideration. Doesn't really comment that city council will ultimately provide that.
well, and I guess my take on that was for our consideration to request funding for it.
Okay,
But I
yeah.
can ask that question.
Would you mind?
I would be
Just
happy
that we
to.
don't want to get stuck with a bill.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, Sharon.
No, everyone, the school board members had opportunities to submit names for inclusion on the task force. Who actually appoints these? Will it be?
The steering committee.
Steering committee, okay. And the other thing, so will this help with I know a lot of times we have items that are on the CIP plan that get delayed or pushed back due to having to move funds around, or that right now we just can't do that. Some of the projects I know that were on the CIP plan for some of the schools. So will this help with that?
I think it will help identify
Decrease those
need, but it will
delays.
not move, we go by the CIP plan, and it's not going to move anything off that plan because of the study. We still have a year-to-year CIP plan, but this is more long-term. If you're looking at buildings that are, and I don't want to point out schools, but we're a school division of aging buildings, and if we've got to look at how these are being used and if we can continue to finance them. Dr. Gupta?
To me, I take it this is just like a study or a plan. To operationalize it will be the next step. May it be through the school board to city council or city council to school board and back to them. But coming back to the membership, I hope, Madam Chair, it represents the demographics of this town and our urban population.
That was very
And,
important.
and I'll be very concerned about the chair and vice chair. I hope it's not skewed, SKUD, skewed in one direction. That represents a diversity in that chair, vice chair position.
Yes, thank you.
You may or may not see that at that level, Dr. Gupta, and that's an interesting point. But I do know that great effort has been placed into getting a diverse committee together across all of the demographics. And I'm just not going to get into what my thoughts were in the meeting in relationship to what I thought the chair should be. But I know that they're going to do the best they can. to be diverse at that level.
And that was part of the issue, that we wanted to make sure that this committee and the subcommittees represented our community. And that was, at City Council, it was very important too, when they talked about the diversity, when I watched their meeting on membership, that was very important.
Which includes gender,
Yes.
should include gender.
Any further questions? Dr. Nillis?
On page 2, talks about how the city of Lynchburg and Lynchburg City Schools staff will be responsive and transparent to the requests of the task force. You know, I think it's, well, maybe it's not clear, but I mean, we have our normal jobs and duties throughout the year that we need to take care of, as well as the staff. And they're very busy. I have concerns that there'll be requests to the task force. Task force will make, seems to me, most of the, or a lot of the requests will probably come to administration. Superintendent's our employee. I think, you know, the school board, if there's a conflict, priorities, I think the school board needs to engage on that, as opposed to this being bumped up to the task force steering committee chair. So I have a concern about a butting of heads potentially, you know, downstream at some point. You know, when you look at what goes on throughout the year, from, you know, pretty much November through now. I mean, there's a lot of budget work going on, and a lot of it's a very busy time. So. And
that was a concern that Dr. Edwards expressed as well, about how enormous amount of work.
And I know the superintendent is supposed to be, you know, available, and tries to be available for every parent, you know, for issues at schools, and you know, this is just adding on, and we need to respect that. The task force needs to respect that. I'm not sure how we're going to moderate that, you know, in case. It might work out fine. It's just the way this is written right now. I think there's a potential for an issue. I'm not sure how we address that at this point. I mean, I assume we're not modifying this charter right now. We're just discussing it.
Well, yes. We're supposed to vote on it.
But you are taking back the concerns.
I will take back the concerns, yes. Was there another question? So the concerns about the finance, concerns about the staff time.
Well, and I guess to reiterate on costs, you know, certainly there's probably a need for some consultants to come in for various things. You know, it's going to take some money. You know, where that comes
Diversity, cost, time of staff, and request for information.
It's staff priorities. You know, it's like we work with the superintendent, and she delegates down the chain, and you know, if we have administrative staff on one of these subcommittees, and there's a priority issue, who decides? I mean, normally it would be the superintendent, but now if we have the task force chair coming and saying, hey, you know, this subcommittee wants this information and they need it by next week, and well, we got a school board meeting, and
It's a time frame, timing is a problem as well.
just people need to, I mean, if everybody's working together and considerate and acknowledges that, you know, I wanted this next week, but it might be 3 weeks that I get it, and then
Reasonable.
then we, well, yeah, try to legislate reasonable. But
Sharon, did you have another question?
Does everybody feel comfortable with the time schedule? At first, it was relatively what was coined as aggressive, and this is a less aggressive approach in terms of a timeline. So
I think right now it looks okay.
But there is, you can modify it.
Once the subcommittees get
Right.
start coming up with things, you know, there might need to be some
Some
replanning,
modification.
just based on how complicated things are, or maybe it goes really well.
And it's a proposed schedule. Timeline may be necessary if the scope of the work is more complex or other circumstances intervene that we may have to. Okay. Any more questions for me to follow up on, or? Yes.
Okay.
So I think it was discussed too, since we are in the middle of working on our strategic plan. And by the way, we spent most of Friday at the Business Alliance. Thank you, Business Alliance, for allowing us to meet there to do the family and community engagement goal and work on that. And we were probably, out of our 5-year plan, we got up to year 2. And that was all day Friday, just going through that and writing out objectives and action plans for that. But it was discussed that the work that we're doing on our division strategic plan is my number one priority to address your question, that's got to come first. And in some cases, some of the work that we're doing on strategic plan might inform where we're going, or information with the larger task force, which is a bigger time span. And with regard to the timelines, we're hopeful that we can get most of the plan up and running, but there may be parts of our strategic plan that aren't 100% by September 15th, depending upon kid needs. And the other question or comment that came up is, from our plan will come some recommendations that are timely within the next year or next 2 years, whereas this larger task force is going to be over a longer term. And whether or not, if we made recommendations to address enrollment, or even as we look at transportation across the division, if there were some changes that we might recommend there, would anything that this task force is doing prohibit us from making those recommendations? And the answer that I received was no. So that we still have the business, it rests with the school board and myself, to do the work of the school division and continue that work going forward. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I too share some of Mike's concerns, Dr. Nelson's concerns regarding if we're working on joint projects and my staff is working on one thing for strategic plan, if at the same time there is a request for task force work, I'm just going to call it strategic plan trumps task force right now, because that is the initial work of the school division, and we will work collaboratively as possible, and we'll manage expectations and timelines to get it all done. But it's going to take all of us having an open mind about what's reasonable in terms of what we can deliver. But I'm excited.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for us, and if you have an interest on serving on any of these, or if you have another name, we're still, those names have not been determined. Okay?
And I'm always grateful when there are opportunities where the school board and council can work together. And let's trust that this is what will happen.
Well, if you have any other comments or questions you want me to take back, I'd be happy to do so. All right.
Do they need board action to appoint?
No, we're going to do that in July.
Okay.
We can't, because we don't know who's going to be appointed to the school board. Okay. The next business is the notice of closed meeting. As permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, the school board needs to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of a personnel matter involving the performance, evaluation, or assignment of the superintendent. The school board chair recommends that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2 for the purpose of personnel matter involving the performance, evaluation, or assignment of the superintendent. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I know I left out discussion, but that's all right. We're going to have discussion. All right. We're now going into a closed meeting. Where would you like to go?
I like it right here. I'm willing to go upstairs.